But then, Brian, we got the number one contender match for the Intercontinental title. And this, I will watch anything Bron Breakker does. And not because everything he does is perfect, because I love to see the natural talent, the incredible personality, the magnetic charisma that he's got, the fucking intensity. And I like seeing him get better and get more over, and the people are starting to realize what's going on. And again, Bron Breakker versus Ilja Dragunov, but we've seen it before, but it doesn't get old. And I thought remember, I didn't think the first one was, they either had a clash of styles or I just didn't like it as much as I thought I would. But this one was fucking great. And, Ilja is so animated, and the way that he sells and his body language and the facials, and he does unorthodox shit. I'm not sure how I feel about the diving forearm finishing blow on the guy that's flat on the ground, because there's no bump, and sometimes to me it seems like you might be able to see through it. And some people that have taken it might say, see through what, motherfucker? But you know what I'm saying. But anyway, I like both these guys, but Braun is a superstar. And they do a lot of different shit. Even Braun with the gourd buster type of deal, but stomach first on the top of the ring post. You don't see that every day. And they also give the shit a chance to breathe if it's something big, boom. Because of the selling, and Braun's getting it down where he can be off balanced by a smaller guy. Did you see the part where Michael Cole said, well, Pat McAfee has just coined that move, a Frankensteiner?
Yeah, what was it? Was he playing around? Did he really not know it? I mean, when you think about it, he's always been calling it a Hurricane Rana. When Scott Steiner was there, he was not doing that move anymore. Did Michael Cole really not know that it's a Frankensteiner? And by the way, they changed that. I mean, everyone who did it for a few years, it was called a Frankensteiner. And then with the rise of the luchadors in WCW, Hurricane Rana became the accepted name for it.
Right.
But for I don't know about a generation, but for a fan base for a few years, it was established here as the Frankensteiner, and that's kind of what it always was.
Well, and you know what it was back in the 60s and 70s, don't you?
Something you never saw except if Gordman and Goliath came to town?
No, Ricky Morton was doing that in fucking 1979.
Right. I mean, again, Scott Steiner did it a little different because he was actually sending the guys to the ropes, but Ricky Morton was doing that in Mid-South Wrestling in 84, the stuff we talk about. Yeah.
And I mean, the flying guys in the 70s, but it was called a Mexican head scissors because that's the way they did it in Mexico. They didn't do the regular flying head scissors that the Gibson brothers, Ricky and Robert, were so good at, or Red Bastien, or, all baby faces in the 50s and 60s and 70s. They did it from the front like that. So it was a Mexican head scissors. In Mexico, it was still a Hurricane Rana. But when Scotty started doing it, at the time, the opponent would be stationary or standing up from a bump, and you would run up and jump up on the shoulders, sit there, and then backflip and do it. But I don't know that anybody in America had, or maybe even in Mexico, I don't know, had shot the guy on the ropes and on the fly jumped up, caught him, and fucking took him over at that point. That's why all the guys in I think of how many things Flair had seen. How many things all those guys had seen, and they were holy shit. It was new to them. And so that's, at first, Scotty didn't really have a name for it. And then it was one of the Clash of Champions I was doing with JR. I did the interview with him. Goddamn, where was it? Somewhere in the Northeast. I was doing the interview with him. And Scotty had earlier that day said, hey, I came up with an idea. I can't do Scott. I want to call it the Frankensteiner. Oh, great. So, because I was on the booking committee at the time. So I went and told Flair, yeah, it's great. Feed him the question or whatever. So I asked him, hey, what do you call that thing or whatever? And it was just his idea that day. But anyway, and then Braun is doing it in a completely different way than anybody else has because he's so athletic and the spring in his legs. He adds the run up to the ropes. It bobbled that once, but he's nailed it a lot. And then the double fucking kind of fuck you up top, and then the leap and boom. He's spinning so fast that the guy has to take his own bump. And you can kind of say, okay, well, it's the momentum, right? The guy being snapped off by his head. But the one thing that Scotty did on the fly is he's kept the head scissors and took the guy all the way over and ended up on his knees on top of the guy. And that was just amazing for his size. And some of the guys that were coming off the ropes, the job guys back there, were like, a bucket of disconnected body parts.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like is you should call it Frankensteiner because that's what it is, but it points out that that's Steiner, but he's not?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only weird thing about it.
But anyway, so they had a good match. I encourage everybody to watch Bron Breakker since then you can say you knew him when he's the WWE champion in 2 years or whatever.
What'd you think of the finish?
I liked the finish because, well, here's what the finish was. If you didn't see it, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, Ilja hits a big move on the apron like a Death Valley driver, and Braun's out on the floor, and Ilja's going to come and jump off on him, and Braun comes at him with a spear, boom, and he sold it on the floor, and the referee stopped the match. And they blamed the head hitting the apron, and I'm pretty sure I don't want to be, Ilja called me up and say, hey, motherfucker, I got a concussion. But I think he skirted by the back of his head on the apron. I don't think they intended to be that close to the ring. But it ended up that way because Braun's so explosive anyway, he just took him. But it was better off because Michael Cole instantly, look, his head hit the back of the apron. Or back of the ring.
And he sold it on the floor pretty good, too.
Yes. But anyway, with that impact, boom, and the guy sold it. And the referee got in there, and he couldn't get up. He had the breath knocked out of him, whatever. And that saved beating him 1, 2, 3, but it still got Braun, over as the winner. And so now he's got the shot at Sammy for the Intercontinental title. It will be unusual, I would think, to see Braun lose twice to the guy. Don't you think?
At SummerSlam, I don't think they could beat Braun after they just beat him in the previous match with Sammy, unless there's a bigger story they could somehow tell that we're not thinking of, but I don't think he should be eating any more losses right now.
At any rate, I love shit like this. Everybody's being serious about what they're doing. There's a plan. There's a game plan. They're getting a heel over and getting a babyface over too with Ilja.
But that's part of the issue with Raw. You have the General Hospital segments, but then you have the Dark Shadows segments. You go from the serious, the things that make sense, whether it's talking or a match like this. And let it be said, Michael Cole is much more tolerable now than he has been maybe ever without Vince McMahon there. And McAfee could be annoying, but he gets a good line in there every now and then that like shifts the commentary. And he says like the right thing and no one else does. But he's also annoying in between all of that. And I think he's kind of aware of it too, which, makes it even funnier. But you get these segments and these things that work and are serious. And again, they're establishing both these guys. Ilja's lost a lot. And I don't think it's hurt him yet because of the way things have gone down. But they're trying to establish these guys. But then you go to the wacky, the silly, or the lights out, whatever it may be.
Or just the juvenile, potentially.
Yeah,
because
the juvenile, that's a good way to put it.